Amalanga shona malanga ye. Amalanga shona malanga. Amalanga shona malanga ye. Amalanga shona malanga. Amalanga shona malanga ye.
Welcome once again in the Big Daddy Football Corner. It's very interesting. 2026, the games are coming thick and fast, and you know that when a video drops, especially a post-match analysis video, that Orlando Pirates have played. The first game, in the renamed Orlando Amstel Arena, Orlando Pirates, actually won convincingly against Magesi. On Twitter, we are saying the white genocide football, was on display, at the new arena, the only club in South Africa that's actually playing in an arena. I think it was a brilliant performance, from Orlando Pirates all over, especially in the first half. It was clean, it was nice, it was neat. The only thing that I will possibly say, that we might need to improve on is we should have scored a little bit of more goals. I felt that this game we could have easily won by 4 goals, or even 5. I think the coach even said, that we could have scored even 5 goals because, at the moment we, even if you look at the log, it tells you that, the goals difference is going to play a huge, a role, especially in deciding how this league is going to end, But again, the positive again is that, Orlando Pirates kept a clean sheet, our goalkeeper, in this instance, Osipho Shane, also has a clean sheet once again, adding up to the many clean sheets that he has had, especially, in this particular season. Now, if we look at the lineup, for me, what I was looking forward in this lineup was a lineup that was going to say we want to go and win, because I think it's time that we move away from experimenting and giving it this and this an opportunity. I felt that pressure was mounting on Orlando Pirates, especially with Sundowns winning in the last extra time, Kaizer Chiefs moving into the second place. It was putting a lot of pressure, Orlando Pirates. Amazulu also getting into that zone as well. It was putting a lot of pressure on Orlando Pirates, and I expected that they needed to react, and they needed to react harshly and send, and actually send a signal to everyone to say, Orlando Pirates is here, to play. Let's look at possibly in the first half. Right in the first half, Magesi were just using that direct play. They were looking to attack Orlando Pirates using the second phase, and it was very important for Orlando Pirates that if they don't win the first ball, especially once that first pass, from the back comes from, Uchipezeze, if we don't win the first ball, at least we react on the second phase, much better. And I think we did extremely brilliantly into that game. And out of possession, I noticed that Magesi was dropping more into a low block. They were defending narrow and compact, and it was another game that Orlando Pirates, in the very first 5 minutes, it was clear that it's another game that Orlando Pirates will require, to break a low block. I was happy when I heard on the man of the match, Mofokeng talking about that. It has been something that has been a conversation in the Orlando Pirates team to say they need to break that low block. But we'll get into details in terms of how they broke that low block, which was very interesting for me. An early goal for Orlando Pirates, they scored. It was a very important goal, especially in that phase of the game, to score that very early. It gave them even the confidence to say you can go on to win this particular game, and Magesi won't pull a surprise. And I think it was just an opening of many goals to come. Typical you know, a goalie Orlando Pirates overload on the left channel, which is something that we've talked about in the channel. The cutback instead of a cross, you know, Mbuthuma instead of running into the near post, which I've seen him doing a little bit more, especially in the last game, you know, against the same Magesi. But instead, you know, he took a step back, you know, and then the pass came to him, great control, and then it was a net. You know, I was very, very impressed in this game about Orlando Pirates players' circulation of possession at a very high speed. I love the combination of the high tempo, the high intensity, the constant running, the constant positional rotation, the high counter press, which is what even Coach Wadi talked about, you know, in his post-match, you know, of this particular match, that it was important that, you know, they press high the opponent, they suffocate them in their own half, they always win the ball in that half, and they always, it looks like the plan for Orlando Pirates was to ensure that you let them play, you know, long, and you deal with the first ball, and if you don't, you act on the second phase, which was very, very interesting for me. It was insane. It was beautiful to see. You know, for me, the conditional coaches at Orlando Pirates, they need to we need to give them, you know, their flowers, because for Orlando Pirates to play at that speed, at that intensity for the entire 90 minutes, it was very, very, very interesting. We suffocated Magesi mentally, physically, tactically. You know, the defenders were confused who to pick, whether to defend space or whether to follow the attacker, which was very, very interesting to see. You know, this is exactly how you beat a low block. If you want to constantly shift the defensive block with speed, you gotta have to move the ball faster. You know, and that was very, very interesting for me. What also surprised me into this game was Coach Wadi keeping Umoremi more on the right-hand side and asking him to invert, you know, into midfield with a stronger foot. You know, and for me, I'm going to say this, you know, that I still say that Moremi's best position is not as a half winger. For me, he's insane when he's on the left hand side, strongest side, you know, and he's a born natural, typical Orlando Pirates winger that use insane best of speed and pace and acceleration, you know, and I felt that at times, even though I think he played well, but I just felt that he wasn't as crispy as you would want him to be onto that side. Then Yonela Mbuthuma, for me, if there's one aspect of his game that I think if he can improve on and work on, he could be even you know, counted amongst the top goal scorers in the league. If he can improve his first touch and control, his GA will significantly improve, and he'll be counted amongst the best players into this particular league, because the first goal, it was his control that allowed him to pass. The second goal, it was his control, even though the ball almost slipped away, that got to Rele for Rele to score that particular goal. So if he could improve more into that aspect of his control and pass, you know, and in his first touch, he's going to cause a lot of problems. Another goal before the first half, you know, from Urele. Another goal in the critical phase of the match. 41 minutes, you know, Mofokeng being the catalyst, the magician that Orlando Pirates desperately needed as number 10. You know, I think this season, if there's one position that I felt that Orlando Pirates, you know, were struggling at to find that perfect number 10, I mean, it is that position, you know, behind the striker. You know, Orlando Pirates have always been looking that player that's going to stay in that zone 14, you know, receiving between the lines, you know, and always cause magic and post threat into that zone. And I think Orlando Pirates have found that particular player. In my view, in this season, Urele is the best number 10 that we currently have in terms of what he's able to produce. Go and check the numbers. The numbers, they don't lie in terms of what he's able to produce whenever he has played into that zone. For me, Urele this season, he ticks all the boxes, you know, to play into that position. Yes, I agree. His best position is an inverted winger. But right now, Orlando Pirates need him more as a 10, more than as a half winger. A beautiful goal again from Urele. And the technique yake of not wanting to just placing the ball, you know, up. It was brilliant, guys. It was brilliant. And tuning up, you know, in the first half. And Orlando Pirates was cruising. In the second half, Usibelebele was subbed in, for Utiano, which for me still remains a strange decision, because I don't think Utiano put his foot wrong in this particular game. But I guess the coach wanted maybe speed, especially in the final third, somebody who's gonna add more, the numbers whenever Orlando Pirates has the ball. I just also felt that at times, decision making in the final third, in that final pass, was not, that I think we could have scored 2 or 3 goals more, than the 2 that we scored. Had that final pass and decision making in the final moments was cleaner and better. I felt at times there was misplaced, final balls, poor, choice of decisions, in the decisive moments. And Moremi, I think on a couple of occasions was guilty, of such decision, and without a doubt, Orlando Pirates still need to improve in the final third in terms of that decision making and that final pass becoming a little bit cleaner and better. I also noticed a little bit of selfishness at times that comes in the final third, where players, will want the glory, will want to score the goal, and be counted amongst those players that scored a goal instead of passing a ball into a better position teammate. I think Usibelebele, there was one chance where, I felt that he could have made a pass, in the far post, and it's something that has happened even in the previous, game as well, where he needed to make that particular pass. And I think he needs to improve more to try and lift his head up, look at teammates that are much better. Again, it was beautiful to see, Udiyong come into this game, Umlungwetu, and that's one reason why, even the football that we are playing now, we are calling it white genocide football, because of Udiyong. He almost even, kept the goal, on his debut, Also good to see Umsendami, coming in. It was also interesting to see Udiyong playing as a 9, and while most people were also saying he's going to play as a 10, it'll be interesting going forward how he's going to be. But for me, he's a replica of Ulokuzana. He's a replica of our tall striker, in this instance, Umakhopa. And for me, he does everything that Makhopa does and even more. But it'll be interesting going forward how it goes. But fact, if there's anything that I've missed or you felt or that you saw that I might have seen, please come in the comments. But make sure, you follow, you subscribe to the page, you comment, on all our socials, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. See you on Tuesday, Bafet, against the Manzulu at Moses Mabhida Stadium. Away.